Boxscore Geeks show. Brian, yes, I am a hologram from the future. Brian, yes, we are going to be talking Clash at Demon ahead. And actually, Brian, I'm looking at our script Metroidvania ranking, but more importantly, we're going to be talking the return of the Boxscore Geeks, the return of wins produced, and what the heck is going on this season. Yeah, Brian, it seems like yesterday, although I think what our last show was many months ago.
Yeah, that's right. It was at the end of last season, so it's been over 6 months, and it's maybe we're going to be gone for good, maybe not, but we are back. It is 2025 now. We are doing another show. The NBA is here. More importantly, Dre has done all the work to update boxscoregeeks.com, and we have the new wins produced numbers now. And of course, it's GDQ week. Games Done Quick, the charity streamathon, as Dre was referring to, and maybe a few other things going on in America in 2025. A lot going on. We're not going to talk about that today, though, I don't
And
think.
leave it, yeah, leaving it alone. I mean,
Good to
here's an
talk to you,
interesting
Dre.
thing. Here's a good segue. So after I got the numbers back up, Dave Barry did a really nice piece over at Substack and did some of the history and a very truncated history of kind of the analytics stuff. And it's a fascinating point to make on advanced numbers, which we do love around here, because advanced numbers cut a lot of debates short quickly that could be fun. The easiest one, my most favorite, is Kobe Bryant. Whenever you see an infographic, whenever you see a ranking, who are you going to cut right on this Mount Rushmore of players? And it's, Shaq and Bill Russell and LeBron James and Michael Jordan. I don't even need to look at the graphic. I'm like, it's Kobe. Like, I, like it's always Kobe. It's a captcha. It's like it's always Kobe. Kobe never belongs on that list. He never has. He never will. That's always easy. There are arguments that get more nuanced. One of my favorites from old school days would be, for instance, Hakeem Olajuwon versus David Robinson. That gets much more interesting. But a lot of arguments that normal fans have disappear. And Dave brought that up in the article. But when it comes down to like our interest in this, we still love talking, we still enjoy it. And what I was going to say, Brian, unfortunately, in terms of like podcasting, I wound up in a very weird position where I did not want to go back to podcasting until the numbers were here. One, I'm anti Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker puts the thing away and trusts his instincts. And I'm like, I need the numbers, I need my research, I need everything in front of me.
They tell him he's a dumbass over the comms when he does that, by the way. Like,
Which
Luke,
I
what are you
mean,
doing?
they don't know he has now
Yeah.
now to be fair, this let's take this brief segue there on the Star Wars universe, and also the Marvel universe up there too. They're both owned by Disney now, right? In these worlds, there are magical space ghosts in the Star Wars universe. There are magical people in the Marvel universe. So in our world, yes, a person randomly going like, I'm going to cover my eyes and shoot at the sky. You're like, that is insane. In the Star Wars universe, there are people alive in the Rebel Alliance that have seen Jedi. So that's always where it gets weird, is in those universes where they're like, this doesn't make any sense. It's like, no, it does. You've seen it.
It's only been
So
a few years since, like, the Republic hadn't fallen for that long. Like, everyone's still alive, right? They all remember the Jedi Order.
yeah, so it doesn't. No, I mean, we said we weren't going to touch politics, but this does get amusing
Oh, I
where
need to watch Andor, Dre. I need to watch Andor.
there's so much to talk Andor in funny ways.
I've
I
never
haven't
seen it.
seen, but there's stuff, but related to that. But what I was going to note is you can see in modern day politics how effective propaganda and erasing history works. So there's something to be said there, but we're going to get off track there. Getting back to like the box score geeks, what I did find fun is Dave kind of went back through history, and good God, Brian, we were so young and naive when we started doing these podcasts and stuff, and it's fun to still be doing them. It is kind of a normal thing that I'm used to. But what I found amusing for me is when I started this, I'm not as much sure for you, but when I started this, I kind of did this as a project to teach myself in my profession. I am a software developer. And then now it's the flip side, right? I am now paid to be a software developer that has all of these skills. So it's like it is a much different world to say you're a young person that in your free time is doing this to learn to advance in your career. To now go like, this is my career, and I don't want to spend my free time basically doing maintenance work. There's also a big difference, right? The first time you build something, it's fun, it's novel, it's new.
Right.
When you're rebuilding something, it's maintenance and it's work. So I find that kind of thing definitely very fascinating, kind of thinking about the state of the world, why in previous years the box score geeks is up day one of the NBA season, and this year it took a while. And then just had other, it comes down to it, Brian. October and November are busy seasons in many other areas. For instance, if you have a kid, there's school, etc. But I am glad we're back. I hope, I know we're gonna have lost some of you, but some of you are back. Some of you have been asking. And Brian, there is one, I don't want to call it a change, but something I was very happy about. I still have to tweak it a little, but just as an FYI, in terms of the flavor of wins produced this year, and something I've been meaning to do for years, and I was finally able to do this year. If you go over to Basketball Reference, there is a play-by-play chart. If you scroll down for modern years, I want to say from 2001 on. And at Basketball Reference, they do actually have position assignments for players, um, by bin, point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. And this is actually really valuable and something I am going to try and actually go back and update old numbers for at Boxscore Geeks, because if there is a central location of position data, we eliminate one of the degrees of freedom that occasionally ends up in arguments. Because we would have this, where, for instance, Paul George is a good example. Paul George is a player that is very, very rough when it comes to judging. Now let's do this for fun, Brian. Let's keep this contemporary. I can't believe he's still in the league. How long has Paul George been around? He has played forever, right?
I think he's younger than we think he is because I think he is one of those guys who came in fairly young out of Fresno
He,
State. I would guess he's
he's
like 32 or 33.
he's younger than Jimmy Butler by 1 year, 34.
Okay.
Um, he is okay this year, but the traditional thing that has happened, and for what it's worth, I'm happy that that Basketball Reference like agrees with us, is that he gets played um as a power forward. So Paul George this year has gotten, according to Basketball Reference, 86% of his minutes as a power forward, 11% of his minutes as a small forward, 3% of his minutes as a center. And if you go to Box Score Geeks and look at Paul George for this year, you will see that we have his position listed as 3.9. That is coming from not only is the listed position PF coming from Basketball Reference, I use their minutes for that. And like I said, the reason is now, because in previous years where we might, you could even see earlier in his career, I want to say 2016 for Indiana as an example. In 2016, they started playing him at the power forward position. And that's fine. There's not an issue with that. But what I will throw out to you is, and for what it's worth, Basketball Reference agreed, but they said 60-40. So they would have said 3.4. We said 3.6. But that's the point. There were people saying, hey, you're undervaluing Paul George because you're calling him a power forward. He's really a small forward. What I'm saying now is Basketball Reference, one of the most widely respected, widely used place, has position data. One of the key ingredients in the wins produced formula, which is what we use around here to evaluate NBA players. Brief recap: if you're just coming back, wins produced formula works by taking the box score statistics and directly mapping them to point margin, basically how much you outscore your opponent, which maps to wins. Essentially, a point margin about 3.1 points does equate to about a win. So if you have a player, we'll use Paul George as an example this year. This is gonna be painful, Brian. Paul George is negative 1.6 points over par for 48. In terms of memory lane, some other people to list out: Patrick Minton, of course, who made the original NBA Geek that became the Box Score Geeks; Arturo Galletti, who was an editor and analyst over at Wages of Wins. We all did a bunch of stuff back in the day for Wages of Wins in terms of writing and developing. And points over par is Arturo Galletti's basically improvement to the wins produced formula, in the sense that he just changed the unit. So, if we were measuring things in feet, he basically introduced inches, because he's saying wins are great for the whole season, but points is what you want for games. So points over par tells you the margin. Paul George this season is worth negative 1.6 points per 48, meaning if you put Paul George on an average team against an average team, all else equal, played him on a neutral court and played the game 48 minutes, his team would lose by 1.6 points on average. Ouch, right? And then again, that goes up in maps to wins. But part of the key behind how we do it is basically it's the box score statistics mapped to point margin, and then we compare you on a curve against your position. And this gets very baseball like almost in that every team has to have five players on the court at a time, and every team does basically have to play, has to allocate on average, I think what like 242 minutes or something like that per game. I'll tell
Yeah,
you in
I'm
just
gonna
a
run out of
second.
fingers and toes counting all that up.
Yeah, because it's 240 minutes in a regulation game, but of course,
Mm.
the we have overtime, so the average game goes a little higher. So that's by the way why it's point zero nine nine is average for wins per 48. If you've ever dug into the math, wins per 48 is how many wins happen per 48 minutes, right? Which is a regulation NBA game. Point one would be average essentially, because if you took point one multiplied that by five players, because that's 48, you would basically get 500. So you can think of wins per 48 you want as 500 for an average team. If you got to one, oh my goodness, Brian, you'd win every game of the season. That's what teams should try and go for. And that can kind of be hard to do. But a key point about the wins per 48 is we adjust by position because every team has to play five players, and there are both implicit and explicit rules that dictate the flow of the game. Most teams have a point guard. One player and team that does vex me is the Denver Nuggets because Nikola Jokic is the Denver Nuggets point guard, but he's also their center. And I don't know what to do with that, right? When you're trying to evaluate players. And we've had some thoughts and suggestions, but even at a top level, Brian, what I want to go back to, because we're doing like the first day of class reminder, reintroduction to wins produced if you're just coming back. Wins produced and many things are just a simple formula. And the key around like a model is you want something simple that can approximate reality that's it's going to sound weird in quotes, good enough, right? Like if you're making, if you're a director and you're trying to block a scene, you could use Legos, right? You don't need to make an intricate, perfect scale replica model if you're just saying, I want this person here, I want this person here, I want the light here. In fact, it might be easier.
I worked on a movie once, Dre, with Ed Asner, if you know who that is. He passed
What?
away recently. Yeah, this was like 20 years ago. And one of my friends was a stand in for him, and he was in his 20s at the time, and he was Asian. So obviously, he looks nothing like Ed Asner, who was an old white guy at the time. But it's like, yeah, that's what you do for blocking in films, right? You get random people to stand around, you try to figure out how it's going to look, get it right, and then you bring in the actors later, and you're ready to go.
And that actually it's a really, really funny thing as an analytics person, and stuff like this can drive people mad, which is you look for, us in the tech world, right? The jargon will be MVP, not that MVP, Bo Brian, right? Minimum viable product. You just want to go for what's good enough and needed. And so that's what's really fascinating about a metric like wins produced, which is just to say, can I use the box score statistics to get an approximation of how good players are? And what makes basketball so tantalizing to some of us, at least me, and I know you've been doing this for over a decade, Brian. People like Jeremy Britton, Patrick Minton, Arturo Galletti, they're still all in it. Is there is something fascinating in the sports world about how reliable basketball is. Later in this show, we're going to talk Jimmy Butler. And we have loved Jimmy Butler forever, right? We thought he was right. He was the recipient of the Larry Bird Award, which is the most valuable player out of the Eastern Conference the year that he played Nikola Jokic. And incidentally, when Jimmy Butler and Nikola Jokic faced off in the NBA Finals in 2023, which I was at to see the Nuggets win, that was, like top X moment. Somebody might want to have my son in them because, of course, I saw my son get born. I saw the Nuggets win a title with my son. Yeah, we're forming memories, Brian. Good stuff.
That's right.
But that was the first time since Larry Bird and Magic Johnson that the number one and number two player in the NBA played each other in the NBA Finals. So we have loved Jimmy Butler forever, but that is the point, right? Jimmy Butler was as soon as he got, I think he was good from the get, right? Because I think wasn't he he was a third year player. He came out of, was it Marquette or am
Marquette.
I
That's
thinking of
right.
someone else?
Yep.
Yeah, I should know this better. But so
Dwayne
Jimmy
Wade came
Butler,
out of there too. They've had some good shooting guards.
Jimmy Butler, okay, I'm going to be all over the place in just a second. But Jimmy Butler, right? I actually just want to look at his numbers, Boxscore Geeks wise, and just see, how good he's been for how long. Because I seem to recall, I think he was a Rookie of the Year candidate by our numbers. I don't think he won it.
Yeah, so when he
Uh,
was younger, I think if I remember right, he was more of a defensive player and less of a scorer. And then, pretty soon he started scoring pretty well.
yeah. So I mean, yeah. To your point, right? As a rookie, 10 points, 5 rebounds. Yeah, he basically 10 points, 5 rebounds. Kind of everything player. But if we kind of look at him across his career, let's see. Let's do a bunch of fun stuff. So by the way, if you go to boxscoregeeks.com, of course, you can click on a player such as Jimmy Butler. Site's running a little slow. I wonder if you and I are bogging it down or if it's
Yeah, I'm
just taking
bogging
a
it down.
while. All right, so Jimmy Butler goes to the comes in 2012. Who was Rookie of the Year in 2012? Brian, who do we think? So incidentally, the Rookie of the Year was Kyrie Irving. I think we thought it should have been Kawhi, right? Really? 2012 was Jimmy Butler's first season. That is ridiculous. I don't know what to do with that information, Brian. You got old. Okay, but I'll do a quick thing. So in 2012, I'm fairly certain we're going to say Kawhi was Rookie of the Year. Jimmy Butler was quite good, but actually he had no shot because he only played 359 minutes. He was star caliber by his next year. And with the exclusion actually of 2014, where I don't have a real answer, it looks like actually this may be a bug, Brian. This is going to be fun. So in 2012, our numbers list Jimmy Butler as a point guard. And I think that is a mistake. So that's awesome. Because in 2014, according to Basketball Reference, he is listed. Ah, cool. This is fun, Brian. I'm going to go back in time and update some numbers. But 2012, yeah, we thought it was Kawhi Leonard, hands down. Kenneth Faried, actually. Yeah, actually, we thought Kyrie Irving would have placed by our numbers. He wouldn't even have made the podium. So in 2012, Rookie of the Year, Kawhi Leonard, Kenneth Faried, rest in peace. We miss you, man. He's still alive, just not in the NBA.
Yeah.
Should be. Chandler Parsons, great player, had a Carlos Boozer situation where he got himself off of the Houston Rockets. Isaiah Thomas, Gustavo Ayan, interesting. I don't even remember him, but I'll have to see this. And then Kyrie fifth. But Jimmy Butler, good per minute, has been a star caliber player his entire career. And in fact, I know if I go back in time to 2014, I'm going to be able to boost him a little because he is not a point guard that year, and it looks like we have a mistake. That's awesome, Brian. I love being able to fix mistakes. But even this year, and by the way, Brian, this year, according to, again, we're going by basketball reference numbers. Basketball reference says, let's I'm out of game shape, Brian. So let's take a step back. Welcome to the Boxscore Geeks show. We're back. You've gotten your precursor. You know how wins produce work. We're going to be talking. Here's what I want in order, Brian. We'll shift it through it a little bit. The Jimmy Butler trade is going to go first. It was later in our script, but we'll move it first. We, of course, have to come back to the Carl Anthony Towns blockbuster trade for one team, which is how it's supposed to go. We're going to talk a little Cleveland, at least just a shout out. We got to talk OKC, Brian. OKC is blowing my brain in many ways. We're going to talk Jokic, old news. We'll probably then just go down some of our favorite players, which we're kind of doing now, and that'll be it. We'll go get our legs underneath us, and then Brian, I'll throw out to you. If your timing allows, I think my timing allows. I think we can go back to bi-weekly like we used to do, and then hopefully this year, Brian. We've been saying it. If you're a fan of the Box Score Geeks for years, I've made jokes about Dre drinking games like every time I bring up the crack script about how WWE and the NBA are the same, take a shot. Every time Dre says he's going to have time for new tools, take a shot. This year, Brian, this
Yeah.
is the year. It's I it's the year, Brian, I promise. No global pandemics, no kids starting school, I hope. I'm tempting fate. I am wantonly shaking my fist at the ceiling. Okay, but so that's what we're going to go over, and let's start with Jimmy Butler. So Jimmy Butler, Brian, this is something I hadn't realized. So let's break this down. Jimmy Butler is apparently demanding a trade from the Heat. Now, this is interesting. From my perspective, Brian, the right move for the Heat would be to try and move on from Bam, see if they could get an undervalued big, and I think they could win from the get. And part of why I'm even saying that is according to Basketball Reference, who is feeding our numbers, Jimmy Butler is fantastic, and the numbers say that he is getting played as a power forward. So this is very reminiscent to me of Draymond Green. Jimmy Butler is a player that does everything. He is fantastic, but he is older and he is getting played out of position and he has been injury prone. For what it's worth, Jimmy Butler is a lot like Shaquille O'Neal now. If you get Jimmy Butler, you are getting him for 50 to 60 games. You're not getting him for a full 82. The question is, can you get Jimmy Butler in the playoffs? And by the way, Brian, that's not too far off the table to be able to do, but it's just a little bit of work. Playoff numbers is something I've wanted for years. But Jimmy Butler, by the way, good God, last 2 years in the playoffs, 27 points a game, almost 2 steals a game, almost five. Like playoff Jimmy Butler is absurd. So you're not getting a full regular season of Jimmy Butler. But if you get Jimmy Butler on a playoff squad, Jimmy Butler, here's a fun stat, Brian. Every time Jimmy Butler, since he's turned 25, has been in one, two, three, four, five different playoff years where he has played 12 or more games, including the NBA Finals against the Denver Nuggets, which yeah, that was 2 years ago, so he didn't make it last year. But all of those, he has scored over 20 points a game and put up great numbers. So if you get Jimmy Butler, you are getting a productive player that can do very well for you in the playoffs. So from the perspective of the Heat, I would really argue that's what you would want to do. You would want to get a, you know, jettison the bad players. And Bam has been fascinating because I think we have talked him a lot. And Bam, when he was younger, was good, or at least decent. And he does not look good. And he's smacking a lot to me of, say, Brooke Lopez, a player that you're like almost seems to be existing on reputation. And even if you think that he does things like really good defense, at this point, Bam is 3 years removed. This is really rough because in 2022 he was a really good player, and then in 20 and he is actually kind of anomalous where it almost looks like in 2023 he just started playing more, but maybe he got injured in 2022 because he missed like 300 minutes. And I kind of have described players like him like Isaiah Thomas, where they took a dip in production, but they kept their numbers up, so they look normal. But Bam is terrible this year. So the real answer for the Heat this year is if you could move on from Bam, get a half decent big. They're a 17 and 17 team right now. And that's with Jimmy Butler. So if like you can get this team into the playoffs, I forget off the top of my head how the East looks this year. But you know, if the East doesn't look great this year, or looks like the traditional East, right now, the Hawks are eighth in the playoffs. Yeah, you right now the Chicago Bulls with a 17-9 record make the bubble, right? So the Heat could do that, although we've seen this in the past. Brian, tell me if I'm reading this wrong. Jimmy Butler at this point is probably gone.
Yeah. So yeah, your scenario that that train has left the station. Jimmy Butler was demanded a trade and then was suspended by the team immediately afterwards. So I think that the Bam Adebayo question is whether or not they would try to ship out Bam along with Jimmy Butler and do a whole rebuild. But yeah, I'd be surprised if Jimmy's coming back. And here's the reason for it. He basically said, I'm still the man, as you were pointing out. He still has great numbers. He still has very recent history of, leading the Heat through the playoffs multiple times. But and he wants to get paid like that. He's getting paid like 48 some million something this year. Next year he has the option for 52. He wants to keep getting paid for several years like that kind of player. The Heat told him, "No, we are not going to pay you straight up." And so that is what led to this situation. The Heat will not pay the money.
And here's what where this gets fascinating. A player that remains like an all-timer for me, ironically, rookie of the year, the same year that Jimmy Butler was a rookie, is Kawhi Leonard, where I would really make the argument that the Kawhi experiment in Toronto was a success. They won a title. So if you trade for Jimmy Butler, and let's say you just play ball, you say, hey, we're going to trade for you. We got you for this season and you're productive this season. And you want to play with us again and get paid, you got your player option, you can re-up, and then we can see where to go from there. That still seems fine to me because we were talking this pre-show, and it's a really rough concept in the NBA is like the Pareto principle. I'm going to give a shout out. We're going down glory road following Dave Barry's write up of the Wages of Wins group and some of the history there, and I'll try and fill in some gaps too. That I might have to do a follow up writing it like Substack as well. And Jeremy Britton way back in the day wrote an article about this, about how the NBA is a Pareto league, right? It's driven by the stars. You got a Steph Curry, you can win. You got a Nikola Jokic, you can win.
Well, you should define it, the term first.
Okay, so Pareto, the general premise of the Pareto principle, thank you very much, by the way,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
reminding me to do that, is that 20%, it's usually around 20, but the
80-20
ratio
is
could
what,
vary.
yeah.
80-20 is the typical Pareto principle. I would make the argument that you could probably use statistical analysis on any population where you have concrete statistical analysis to look at. But it basically is a minority of the people in a big population do a majority of the work, is how it works in Pareto systems. And the NBA is one of these. Where you go to the NBA, like right now, you go to Boxscore Geeks, you just look at 2025 numbers, right? Which I did have up, and then I just have to have like 4 tabs open, Brian. I'm gonna have to. That's what I really need is I need like a Boxscore Geeks page that just has like 5 pages open at once. But basically, if you look at the top of the
But you
NBA,
don't have 10 tabs on multiple monitors on each one like me.
I actually do have this giant monitor that I need to take advantage of when we're doing the show, and in future I'll definitely do that. But here's the thing, Brian. Top of the NBA, this is wild, and a player we loved, and I'm so glad he's healthy. Reminds me of Steph Curry, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. 9.5 wins produced. Um, Top of the NBA right now. He is followed closely by Josh Hart and Nikola Jokic. We love Josh Hart. He may hate analytics, but analytics love him. Okay, so that's the top three. 9.5, 8.7, 8.3. So you can even notice a dip there. Bronze, silver, gold, or yeah, bronze, silver, gold. I did it right, reverse order. High. There is a drop off to Sabonis at 6.4. So a 2-win drop off. He is fourth in the NBA. If we drop down, like by 2 wins, we get to 4.4 and we get down to Kyrie Irving. Man, Kyrie Irving is so annoying to me. By the way, Kyrie Irving is below this season Jimmy Butler, despite playing 8 more games at an easier position for what
That's
it's
not
worth.
going to
So,
last. He's hurt now.
okay, well that's rough, but that's part of like was my argument. But like Kyrie Irving has just been I didn't like Kyrie or Clay for Dallas, and Kyrie has stayed more
If
healthy.
we
But I mean,
did do a preseason show, Dre, I would have buried the Mavericks and called them terrible. And they've been a lot better than I thought they were. So good thing we didn't do that show.
and Clay, well, I mean, Clay, I mean, here's the thing that here's what makes we'll do okay, we'll put a pin in Dallas when we
Yeah.
get to teams, we'll do Dallas because they're great. But I mean, basically, it's a Pareto league in the sense that you look at the top 10 players of the NBA, and there's already going to be a drop off when you get to 15, and there's already going to be a drop off to this. And basically, if you want to compete, I mean, this isn't hard to look at, and there are 2 flavors right now, which is OKC has far and away the best player in the NBA right now in Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. It is a point guard era, Brian. You get the Steph Curry, Shea Gilgeous, absolutely wild. They do have Jalen Williams, who is pretty good. They do have Cason Wallace, pretty good. It's interesting that Chet, what's Chet doing?
Yeah,
No,
Chet's
Chet's
got a
injured.
broken hip. Chet's got a
Oh
broken
my
hip. I don't know if
God.
he's out for
Okay.
the full season, but he might be. He actually got dunked on by Andrew Wiggins, and Wiggins just like powered through him. Chet was too skinny on that dunk.
I mean, and you can see obviously this is catch up time for me, but yeah, I mean, Chet per minute was looking great. So the
But Dre, they
Oklahoma,
do have Hartenstein was their backup center, and he was like an all-star level center last year. So they are missing depth at center, but it's not bad really.
they should be giving him more minutes, which we've said forever. But here's the point: OKC, strong team, right? With Nuggets construction, though, right? Far and away the best player in the NBA, followed by a team with not a lot of bad players. If you look at Oklahoma, the only two bad players are, I'm going to say Jang. I'm not going to try the first name, and Dylan Jones, but they are getting a combined 400 minutes of play. The players that are getting most of the minutes, like every player, this is a good stat. Every player on the Oklahoma City Thunder that is getting 250 minutes or more is an above average player, with the exclusion of Dort. But you have told me in the past, Brian, that Dort is a defensive specialist.
Yeah.
He is a small forward that is getting played out of position at the four this season. This is using basketball reference, and I'm going to bet 100% that is due to Chet. If Chet was there, Dort would be playing the three, and Dort's actually got good numbers for the three. And if you believe Dort is a defensive specialist, which I believe, that is one, an article I've had on the back burner. Again, another drinking game, Brian, has been like minor tweaks I would make to the wins produced formula. Just, like to my point, it's a good enough model, but I'm like, but if you want to make it a little better, here's like low hanging fruit. And one of the easiest ones to me is we have the portion of wins produced that is defense, that is team defense. And a couple of things I want to stress on this. So to take the brief side road to get back to wins produced talk. First show this season, Brian, so it's okay. Is the explicit defensive stats. So this is things like rebounds, steals, blocks, fouls. The magnitude of those on winning is higher than the magnitude of implicit defense. And but when I say implicit, what I mean is things like man to man, essentially how well you impact opponent shooting and turnovers that are not attributed to an individual player via block or steal. And we kind of know this, right? In terms of players, if you want a good team defense, you as a fan of the Warriors saw it for years and know it. You need a good defensive scheme with multiple people that can buy in. I was talking to Arturo Galletti. I'm really hoping to talk more with him in the future and more stuff, Brian. We'll see where the season goes. But he made an interesting observation where he almost said that you could almost view a defense as a three system, where you have the backstop, the center, we know that, right? The Rudy Gobert. You have the primary on-ball defender, Jimmy Butler. In his heyday was this. I don't know if he still is, but at least back in the day he was. And then you have kind of the primary switcher, if that makes any sense. So like you would know better than me, but in the heyday of the Warriors, that would probably be Draymond Green as the
Oh,
backstop.
you're hitting a sore spot for me right now. This
Oh,
is
what
a
do you?
tangent. Oh, all I can say it real fast actually. So in the offseason, everyone's saying Draymond Green has got to be the center now. He can't play power forward anymore. The Warriors need to be permanent small ball. I'm, of course, face palming because we know that's bad. And it's being reported, oh, this is going to happen for sure. And then we get to the beginning of the season, and Steve Kerr's like, oh no, Draymond's starting at power forward. He doesn't like starting at center. And it's like, because Draymond plays that free safety type of position you were talking about. There's an interview with him where they're talking to him about defense and they're talking to him about the rule, following the rules of defense and all that to play the switching scheme. He's like, no, I break the rules all the time because I know what I'm doing, right? So I have heard that a million times as well.
Again, I guess okay. So I'm incorrect, and I mean
Oh
actually,
no, I
what
was
you
trying to agree with you.
well, it's funny because there could be two parts, right? You could like you had Bogut early, right? I could see him being that, and
Yeah.
and we've noted, by the way, just as a staying on this tangent about the Warriors being special in many ways, players like Dennis Rodman, Draymond Green, if you have unicorns, the world's different, and I think when you have players such as LeBron James, Michael Jordan that can play 1 to 5, that's just a cheat code. And I would make the argument that Dennis Rodman and Draymond Green on defense are that, right? There is not a position they cannot guard. which makes them so valuable to a team because when it comes to team construction, you don't have to say, that's happened with certain teams. Like we already have this player, that type of player is redundant. If you were the Phoenix Suns, for example, you might say, we already have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. We don't really need Bradley Beal. What do I know? Um,
And switching defenses are very popular right now.
but and you do need good team construction, but like how you would properly assign credit, because all wins produced does is it says we know how good the team is aggregately at defense. We'll just split it up by minutes played and call it a day. You could make improvements on that. So to your point on like Dort is close enough to average on OKC that I would say if you think he's a good defender, which I do think, it pushes him above average, and then he's getting played out of position. So I'm basic, and this has been to stay briefly in tangent land for a while on why it is really hard to evaluate stuff. We have used this line forever, and it has gotten bastardized in the analytics community that wins produced, and pretty much any box score stat is what I'm going to call a descriptive stat. It tells you what happened. And the reason it is valuable in the NBA is it tells you how valuable the player was in the game or the season, and it is a really, really good signal for how good they're going to be next season. That's what makes it valuable. But if I was running an NBA front office, I would not use wins produced out of the box. And you and I have spent years and years and years, Brian, at this point, discussing the nuances. When we get back to Jimmy Butler, thanks for letting me get my tangent legs out, Brian, on future shows. When the script is more concise and stuff, I'm sure we'll stay more on target. But like when you look at Jimmy Butler, there are considerations. How good is your team? What is your roster construction? What is your salary cap? If you trade this, are you going to have pieces for that, right? It gets much more subtle and nuanced when you are trying to evaluate like how to look at players. So a descriptive statistic. So for stuff like team defense, etc., I have even started getting more to the point with like wins produced of going, I could see doing just in game, right? Not doing across the league. And that changes things up because, for instance, a good debate forever was KG versus Tim Duncan. And our numbers put them very, very, very close together. But I guarantee you, if you just did game by game numbers where you only compared against the players in the game, not league wide, Tim Duncan is going to look worse than Kevin Garnett. But I might agree with that because if you sit Tim Duncan down, the Spurs usually had an above average power forward coming in after him, right? They had like Boris Diaw as an example, players like that. KG, when KG sat down, it's a lot like the Nuggets. I've been watching a lot of this season, the on-off statistics for Nikola Jokic, where the Denver Nuggets strategy is like their starting five. Chris Brown, oh my God, I love him. Brian, I don't know what to do with this. I didn't put on the script, so this is the brief call. We'll see if we come back to it. Russell Westbrook being a starting caliber player next to Nikola Jokic. I don't know what to do with that, Brian. I still messing with my head. The Nuggets strategy is their starting five anchored by Nikola Jokic is good. When Nikola Jokic sits, you pray. The same was true with the Timberwolves with Kevin Garnett. So Kevin Garnett, as a descriptive stat, may have been a more valuable player than Tim Duncan just because of other things. And that's what we're saying about like players like Dort, right? Is the context around why we say he is an average player instead of a great player has so much to do with team injury, etc., that we can't just we're just telling you what happened. The why adds more nuance as to what you think the future will look like, which is a much harder problem, which is why we still have a job. In spite of Dave Barry's great post about how stats kill a lot of questions, I think when you start examining it, get into more. But let's wrap up Jimmy Butler. So with all the nuance. So Brian, here's my 2 cents.
Oh, can I get in
If
on that real
oh, go ahead.
fast? Yeah, yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Oh, just that stats should be a conversation start or sorry, all-in-one stats like wins produced should be a conversation starter, not a conversation ender. You should look at that stat and be like, what's under the hood? What's inside there? And dig down. Like when I was, arguing with my friends about why the Warriors picking up Dennis Schroeder was bad, I didn't go to wins produced. I was like, look, he's shooting like 40%. And he's a point guard, and also just real fast on the defense. Yeah, it is the least probably useful thing that wins produce does. But like you said, everything is there that you can slice it up and look at it differently. Greg Steele, the Greek god of stats, did that in his book. So I would say definitely check that out if you want to see another way to assign defense based on win produce. Right? He did it based on defensive load was what he called it, and the challenge that those defenders went up against. So it's all just different ways of looking at the same thing, right? And I think where I land on players like Lou Dort and Bam Adebayo we were talking about earlier, and their wins produced start to get low. Well, that's just because they're eating shit on offense, right? Like their offense is really bad, and the team defense is not enough, to give them credit. So what I do in that case is I say, well, the year that this was like what 2 years ago, I don't know, the year the Heat went to the finals, Bam Adebayo was a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year, right? And we talked about this a little bit. His wins produced looked bad because he was bad on offense, but the Heat were still a top defense, and he's obviously one of the best, probably the most important player, maybe outside of Jimmy Butler, for that defense. So we can kind of intuitively say, great team defense, poor wins produced for a player that has a great reputation as a defender. They may deserve a little more credit than they're given.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had another low hanging fruit that I even brought up about Joel Embiid because it was funny. I thought Joel Embiid, an argument we made when Joel Embiid incorrectly won MVP over Nikola Jokic was that by just the out of the box score statistics, not Jimmy Butler, James Harden, another Jimmy. Um, I don't think anybody's ever done that, but you could James Harden and Jimmy Butler next to each other and call them the Jimmies. That'd be funny. But James Harden, we said by the numbers was better than Joel Embiid, but an easy argument to make is twofold. Joel Embiid's shooting efficiency was actually better than James Harden, which is actually a huge testament because James Harden is a great scorer and Joel Embiid was even better. And I kind of said that Joel Embiid was very hard for me because he's like a reminder of Shaquille O'Neal. There used to be an era in the NBA where the concept of just giving a productive center the ball and letting him score a lot was the norm. And then for whatever reason, after the Michael Jordan era, we was kind of like, oh, you got to give it to shooting guard. And I disagree. And I was kind of saying, well, two things you could do. Defense, we just discussed it. I would probably make the argument, yeah, Joel Embiid, all of his explicit box score statistics, rebounds, blocks, right? Personal fouls, steals, all of that give the indication that he is a good defender. So I would also say if you start carving up the team defense and call him the backstop, he's going to be a better defender than James Harden because they're going to get about the same credit, right, for Philadelphia's defense playing about the same number of minutes. And then a follow-up I've said before, and I know you've heard me talk about this, is going right now we adjust by position. But what I think you should start doing because there is no rule on the number of shots. You have to have five people on the court and you have to have them play in certain positions, but there is no rule about the number of shots. You could have Kobe Bryant take every shot. His last game in the NBA, he did that. You can have players take every shot. So I've made the argument that as soon as you get out of your position's allocated shots, you should start comparing to other positions. And this gets funny twofold. If
Mm.
you are a center, now instead of comparing to a center shooting, and centers are the best in the NBA, right? Centers shoot over 60%. Now you're comparing to a power forward, maybe 58%, and then a small forward, maybe 57%. I was looking it up, Brian, by the way. Modern day NBA shooting is ridiculous. Kobe Bryant's peak NBA true shooting, 58%. Modern NBA average team shooting is 58%. So Kobe Bryant's best year scoring is now average in the NBA thanks to threes. But so those are some low hanging fruit things that I could see that kind of add nuance and subtlety to this. And okay, we'll try fourth time's a try, right? Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, this is easy. Jimmy Butler's on 1 year, and if he hates your team, he'll walk. And here's a very funny two-part of that. If he walks, he's productive, right? The only way Jimmy Butler is going to opt out of his player option is if he's going to get signed. And the only way he's going to get signed is if he finishes off this season strong. And so if you sign Jimmy Butler and think he's not going to stick with you for the season, you're still fine because the only way he doesn't stick with you for the season is if he's really good. So if you're a playoff squad, and the one I was looking at, Brian, by the way, from the Warriors, if they trade Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, Kuminga, who has been playing god awful, and is it Guy Santos?
Guy Santos, yeah, he's
Is it
awesome.
Guy or Guy? Yeah, so Guy
It is Guy,
Santos.
yeah, or as I like to call him, Gooey Santos, because his name is
Gui,
spelled
yes, yes, the
G-U-I.
graphical user.
It's
Yeah,
not
I mean,
G-U-I, it's G-U-I.
GUI. Yep. Okay. But so Gui Santos, right? He makes the mat cleaner. And he is actually needed because the Warriors are so over the salary cap. You're not even like you have to get exactly Jimmy Butler's salary. But Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, Kuminga, because he's killing me. Sorry, Kuminga. I had hopes for you, but is what it is. And Guy Santos, that gets you Jimmy Butler. And I make the argument that's worth it because it's either a gamble, either Jimmy Butler is old and over the hill and not worth it, or Jimmy Butler is worth it. And heck, if he wins a title or goes far in the playoffs in the Golden State Bay Area, which is now a great spot, right? One of the biggest, most affluent markets. So I have no idea. I did not have time today to review the rumor mills where he wants, right? I think Phoenix is one of the few teams that you were saying is on the board for him. I think that the Warriors should make a run for him and see if they can offload Wiggins, Schroeder, and Kuminga for him.
Yeah, they were initially, yeah, and so you're talking about trading Schroeder. The Warriors just picked him up, but I'm pretty sure they can move him again under how the trade rules work. That you can pick up a player and then move them in that
Yeah,
situation.
there are weird rules about if you sign him in the offseason, you basically have to wait till
Yeah.
after December. But in this case, you're saying like if you pick them up like mid-season, you are allowed to trade them
Because they're
again.
like there's rerouting players in three-way trades, so I think that's fine. Yeah, so for the Suns, well, okay, let's back up a little bit more. There was a period of time where it wasn't clear if the Suns were gonna pay Jimmy Butler or not, and so there was starting to be some uncertainty, and they were saying maybe there's some teams, he'd say be willing to go to stuff like that. But since the dam is broken and we've had the trade demand and the suspension, Butler has said he'll go to any team, I think. So, but no one wants to trade for him because they are being wimps and not bring him in unless he will sign a long term deal, right? And it seems like the Suns are the only ones that are going to do that. It's all rumors right now. The Suns have Bradley Beal, and he has a no trade clause. He has like a player. The player has to approve the trade. I don't remember what that's called, but almost no one has that, but he does.
That's
So
hilarious.
yeah, I mean he got it from the Wizards, I think, initially. So he might have to get rerouted to a third team.
That he
Um,
approves of. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, so he got benched recently. Well, so first of all, he was hurt, right? Then he came back. He was not very effective. The Suns benched him, and so maybe that means he wants to be traded. I don't know what's going on with the Suns. I mean, that would be a really good spot for him in terms of like if he can play with KD. First of all, that would be really cool. But that's a good enough, pair with Devin Booker. The three of them, like that's a big three, good enough, to make a run with the Suns. I think they may not have enough around them though. Yeah, I'm kind of behind on the Suns, Dre. I got to read more on them.
The Suns look god awful, and the rough reality is, right, Kevin Durant has been injured since his Warriors days.
That's the whole
And,
game for them, right? Is
and
KD's
he's
health.
he's getting up there in age. Bradley Beal was just a horrible signing, we said from
Yeah.
jump. And we also made the note. I'll throw Clay Thompson in the same boat. This can be our brief tangent to talk Clay, and we don't have to talk too much about him. But what I kind of noted about Clay Thompson when he was in the discussions and like went to Dallas even is Clay Thompson is almost anachronistic. We had the start of this three ball era. And this, like I said, this was ridiculous to look at because I was looking at the NBA when I'm finally getting back to it. I finally get the numbers going and the matrix is finally up in front of me and I'm looking. It was funny because I was watching the Matrix at a movie night and like one of the random Discord
Oh,
servers
I
I was
thought you
on.
were saying like, oh, it's like the Matrix, but you were actually watching the Matrix.
Well, no, it's true though. But here's what's hilarious. I was watching the movie The Matrix at a movie night. And people were commenting how like hilarious it was to have like a coder just sitting in front of a terminal and pointing and saying, I don't see this. And I was like, here's the thing. Obviously, to make things look good on the screen, you have to take liberties. But the coder sitting in front of a terminal with just a bunch of streaming numbers and being able to pick it out, that's way closer to reality. And that's like where I'm at in certain points with the
Because how
NBA.
much time did you spend writing the code in the first place, right? You're familiar with it.
So much. And yeah, Patrick. And by the way, yeah, we mentioned Patrick, Arturo, obviously yourself, Jeremy Britton, Dave Barry, James Ricardo was also a good editor back in the day. But I do really have to give a shout out to Patrick, and like because you and I occasionally talk tech. Patrick did something amazing as a developer, and he and I were talking a little back and forth about this, which is he documented processes from like 3 years ago. So when I had to get the numbers back up for Boxscore Geeks this year, like Patrick from the past was there with really concise, well-written documentation. And if I am able to give advice to develop any developers listening, that is worth its weight in gold as a developer and makes you a popular developer. To, like if Boxscore Geeks was, a tech firm, we're a tech hobby area. Like that kind of stuff makes you so popular and so valuable to your
Well organized
teammates.
comments, maybe?
Well organized comments, procedures documented. He had that right, and it was just absolutely ridiculous. And really do just have to shout that out. And like you're talking, like looking at the matrix. But when I finally got the numbers back up in front of me, I was shocked because I looked and the league average true shooting this year, 57.4%.
Hmm.
The Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets back in the day with Morey ball. This was, free throws and threes, try and get to the line, changed the game. Some people have said for the worse. I disagree. Modern NBA is so much more efficient. So players like Bradley Beal were actually productive about a decade ago. Overpaid, overpriced, overrated, but still productive. But we get to now where Bradley Beal's true shooting efficiency is about 57.9%, or 57.7, I want to say, which is good. It's fine, but that's like league average. And I was mentioning to you that Kobe Bryant in his peak year was 58%. So I mean, the point is, Bradley Beal a decade ago would have would have broken people, right? Like if you take Bradley Beal now and drop him in the 80s, they
Hmm.
feel like, what the hell is this? Now, again, the defense I've always given about this argument is the 90s built on the 80s, the 2000s built on the 90s, the 2010s built on the 2000s. The thing about sports is there is tape, there are nerdy analytics people like us, there are coaches always thinking. So the game is always improving because there is such an incentive to improve. So it is not, and then I was actually talking to Jeff May about this. Muhammad Ali brought this up, and he called himself basically. They said, "How would you fare against greats of the past?" Muhammad Ali, a great boxer in like the '70s, compared to say Joe Louis, and he said that's like comparing a prop plane in World War I to a jet engine. And then I don't even know the
Yeah.
comparison you'd make now comparing, Muhammad Ali to modern boxers. Everything is always improving. So Bradley Beal would break the 80s, but that's because Bradley Beal is built on the 80s, 90s, 2000s. But that's where we run into a problem, which is Bradley Beal, when healthy, 60% true shooter, which is good, but not good enough for the other stuff he does. And in the modern NBA at 58%, where Bradley Beal dropping down to that is kind of a person out of time. Kevin Durant is just injured. And Devin Booker, here's the rough part. I think Devin Booker, I've actually shifted a little on Devin Booker, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I have a Gem Mint 10 rookie card of his, Brian. Nothing to do with that.
Give it more shots, Dre. Pump up the
Yeah,
value of that
I'm
card.
like, I need him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Like, come on, Devin Booker, get an MVP. Then I can get an extra 20
He's got a
bucks in
gold medal
tribute.
now.
Yeah, he's got a gold medal, that kind of stuff. I love. I've liked Devin Booker, but the problem we brought up before is there's one ball, and Devin Booker's skill is shooting. And so when you put Devin Booker on a team next to Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, Devin Booker can't be as good. That's in fact why players like Jimmy Butler are great. So I would actually make the argument if the Suns can trade for Jimmy Butler can probably help Kevin Durant because Kevin Durant's currently playing the four. Jimmy Butler, if you get rid of Bradley Beal, you improve the team, and Jimmy Butler does everything, so you give Devin Booker most shots. That would be good. But the Phoenix Suns, when I'm looking at the Matrix code, man, that is not a good team.
Yeah,
Their
what would the
SRS,
Heats want? What would the Heat want from them? That's what I don't know.
interesting. Yeah, I
I mean, it
mean
would be
that.
just like all their draft picks, right? 3 draft picks or something like that.
Yeah, 3 draft picks. I mean, yeah, none of. I think that at this point it would just be like a salary dump and draft picks. You could maybe, to your point, Bradley Beal. You could try and do the Boston Celtics. I do want to take a throwback to this. We are all over the place. That is the show, though.
Oh, we're still on Jimmy Butler. We're still on
Yeah,
Jimmy
we're
Butler.
still on Jimmy Butler. We've just
Yep.
touched. We should look how many teams. I should make a Charlie Day chart with how many
Yep.
teams and players we've touched associated on the constellation of Jimmy Butler. Um, but if you kind of try and let's see, what was I going for? If you're trying looking for the Boston Celtics, that's what I was going to go for. The Drew Holiday, Damian Lillard trade.
Mm.
I can't believe Boston won that. So Miami could win this trade, or a team could win this trade if like you send Bradley Beal somewhere else and get something else
I mean,
back.
yeah, it
That
could
would.
end up being like a 4-team trade, so stuff can get convoluted.
Do we have any concrete things, or is it still just speculation with, as you're noting, Phoenix was initially the only person on the board. Now everybody, and I'm by the way, I'm agreeing with you. I am seeing sentiment on like Twitter and Blue Sky where people are like, "Good riddance, who needs him?" And I'm just like, no, he's a productive player, and if he's healthy in the playoffs, right, it's
Yeah,
going to help the
the
team.
Warriors local media has reported that the ownership just doesn't want to give up a lot of players and capital for Jimmy Butler, and they also don't want to extend him. And I'm like, and they were like, oh, that makes sense to us. We agree. And I just start going crazy. I'm like, have you guys watched him play before?
Yeah, I mean, and it's I he is well. I mean, don't forget
Here's
when
the
he
cope
left.
though, Dre. The cope is that they're playing hard to get. They're like, we don't want to bid against ourselves. The Warriors are usually kind of honest in the media, so I think they really just don't want Jimmy Butler.
Hmm. Well, we'll see. I mean, the Warriors of late have impressed me. I've got let's see. Let me see on the teams. I'm gonna actually do a team hop, then we'll hop back to players, and then we'll see how long we go.
Or
We
we're
did
done
manage
with
to
Jimmy Butler.
done with Jimmy Butler for now. I wouldn't be shocked if we end up back on. I am curious about this, Brian. So I was watching the NBA closely to start the season. Then, oh my goodness, things got hyper distracting, and then we're back. Did Buddy? I seem to recall Buddy Hield got an injury because that is painful for the Warriors. Because to start the season, Buddy Hield turned into the next Steph Curry shooting from three, and the Warriors looked like a contender. And the Warriors look okay now. And for what it's worth, the key things I will give you about the Warriors looking at them is Steph Curry is playing star level, right? Steph Curry
He's back.
is now a Shaq player, which is you get Steph Curry healthy in the playoffs, and
And it's worth
right,
pointing out, he had a really down year last year. And some people talk about that, but a lot of people are kind of forgetting about it. It was his worst year since his rookie year, and he is back to his old self this year.
so that's awesome. And I'll even say this: Andrew Wiggins back to his normal self, right? Which is
He's
what you
changed
need.
his play style a little, Dre. He's gone more to be a 3-and-D type of player. So he's improved his style and his numbers. He looks a lot better. And a big thing about him is off the court. For the last year or two, he was dealing with his dying father, and his father
Oh,
did finally
oh,
pass away. So now this year, he's like trying to move on and come back to playing basketball.
I love hate that, Brian. The analysts in me likes getting a missing piece of the puzzle because he
Yeah,
was very confusing, right? Looking at his stats,
he was
and
also
we've said that,
missing a lot of time, and
yeah,
we weren't sure why, and that was the reason.
and that'll do it, right? I mean,
Yeah,
we've the metaphor I like using a lot for NBA players is race cars, right? And if you think about a race car race, you have these finely tuned machines that have these pit crews, they have these teams around them that make sure everything is running perfectly. And if a small thing is off, everything goes to heck, right? And it turns out professional athletes are very similar, right? You have a professional player and you tweak an ankle and that can end a career, right? Grant Hill can go from being the next Michael Jordan, true story, he got more votes in an All-Star game than Michael Jordan. When Michael Jordan was in the league, he was the face of the league. I remember his Sprite commercials; those were legendary. And then he tweaks an ankle with it's probably a combination of bad feet, similar to Bill Walton. Grant Hill, right, had bad feet, but allegedly he had a shoe deal with a bad shoe company, and you kind of like wonder if he'd had a Nike or Reebok or
wow.
Adidas contract. I think I would say please, please, please fact check me on this because, of course, I have imbibed so much NBA content that that could have been a blurb or that could be legit. But it's like Grant Hill tweaked an ankle and he went from would have had a top 20 career with how he was playing to great player. We agree with him, first ballot Hall of Fame, especially when you factor in his time at Duke, but didn't do that. So I call professional athletes race cars, right? They're these finely tuned machines where something goes wrong. And one of the things that can go wrong is consistency in playtime. And so it's like, yeah, if you have a player, I mean, the most egregious and one that gets swept under the rug is Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant, had a trigger warning rape trial that he was missing times in the season. And when the Lakers imploded, that was part of it, right? One of your starters is not on the court regularly. And as much fun as it is to make fun of Allen Iverson in the practice rant, regularity, normalcy, stuff like that does affect production. So that explains Andrew Wiggins because Andrew Wiggins is this player that, if for people that don't recall, and you and I have spoken hours and hours on him, Brian, which is fun. When he was traded to the Warriors for, was it D'Angelo Russell after Kevin Durant?
That's right. That's
It
right.
went Kevin Durant to D'Angelo Russell. Argument was D'Angelo Russell was a placeholder because you needed to hold that cap space to be able to trade it. And then you made the argument that I kind of agree with that D'Angelo Russell was cubic zirconium. The only trade on the board was Andrew Wiggins because people were like, where are they going to trade D'Angelo Russell? What are they going to get for them? They're going to get Jimmy Butler and they got Andrew Wiggins. And Andrew Wiggins looked terrible in
Although the
Minnesota.
Lakers did take him on later, interestingly, and have
For much
since recently traded him away, I think, in the last couple of weeks.
interest, and he was okay, not amazing, but he was okay for
He
them.
ended
But
up out of the rotation this year.
yeah, that'll do it. And Andrew Wiggins did turn it around
Yeah.
with the
The
Warriors.
trouble is he does make 26 million, which is less than in last year's, but it's still kind of like it's
He
fine,
actually
right? It's
he
fine.
actually pulled a Klay Thompson in every sense of the word, in that he was a player we thought was overrated, that we were like, you shouldn't sign him. And he had a boost in production when they got signed. And then he signed a team favorable deal. For those that remember,
Yeah.
way back in the day, Klay Thompson was on an overpriced contract that mid-contract, because the NBA got a boost in salary revenue from a new television deal, Klay Thompson literally went from being overpaid and overrated to being properly paid, and you could make the argument underrated because that contract gave the Warriors the space for Kevin Durant. So Klay Thompson is worth the contract he's on. Like I said, rest in peace. So sorry to hear that, Andrew Wiggins,
Yeah,
right?
his
And
dad,
not
Mitchell
not Klay.
Wiggins, was an NBA player, actually.
That's right. I think I've
Yeah.
actually pulled his card. That's
Yep.
ridiculous. Yeah, the Warriors have a lot of kids of former NBA players.
They
That's funny.
do. They really do.
Trace Jackson Davis, man, good one. So the Warriors look in good shape. The only real painful spot, by the way, I'll throw out there is Kuminga. And I'm not
Yep.
sure, like Kuminga turned the corner briefly a couple seasons ago and then like regressed. So he's
Yeah.
still young,
Here's the thing.
but
He's
the
still 22, Dre. He came to the
yeah.
league at 18. So he's been very inconsistent. He started out the year really poor. Okay, so let's backtrack even a little further. We during this offseason, so Kaminga had a good year last year, right? He was looking better. I was optimistic, or at least he was poor earlier in the year and improved a lot. So there's optimism heading into the year. And what he told the team was, I want to be a starter next year and also get a max, the rookie max
Mhm.
extension. The Warriors just said, no, we're not going to extend you. And we're also going to put you on the bench. So that's already a big problem, right? The Warriors are already retaining a player that they consider to be a big asset, that they're just like going against their wishes and have completely, misaligned goals, right? So kind of a sketchy offseason for how they dealt with Kuminga to begin with. Earlier in the season, they're like, okay, we're going to give you a little bit of a run. He wasn't doing well, so he got taken out of the rotation, or at least reduced role. He started complaining. He went back. This goes back and forth, right? Lately, all of a sudden, the last few weeks, he gets better again. He has some really big games. If you look at his game log, he has a few games that are crazy good, where he just got like real a ton of points really efficiently, rebounds, everything. So things are looking up, right? Looking a little better, but now he's hurt. He's out for like 2 weeks. So he's just a 22-year-old that thinks really highly of himself, and you have to succeed in the NBA. And he has a lot going for him. He has a lot of good things that can lead to a good career. He's 22, very inconsistent.
Yeah, and that's where it always gets really rough with when you have Draymond Green and Steph Curry and some of these and Andrew Wiggins is getting older too, which is that's
Yeah,
unacceptable.
he's like
Stop
30
stop
now.
doing
Yeah,
stop doing that, young play. You were just entering the NBA as an 18-year-old. How dare you? It's kind of like you might want to just I could see the Warriors doing that, and I mean that's a this is Clay in so many ways because to your point, if Kuminga is out of the rotation right now, um, the Warriors are pretty strong. And the only other question I need to look at his run is Buddy Hield because I'm really curious about his health because
yeah.
oh my God, that was an amazing it was a good pickup just from the get. We actually liked that pickup, right? Like he
Really good
was
salary, right? Like the like what the $10 million exception, something like that, like 8 million. Yeah,
and the past, between Indiana and Philadelphia the last couple of years, he was not amazing. Maybe he just didn't like Sacramento. It's hard to tell because he was really good through he had a really nice, if you look at his age progression from 2017 to 2019, normal age progression from a young player looks good in 2020, 2021, 2022, 2022 looked bad. 2023 though comes to Indiana, gets full minutes, regular team looks really good. The next season looks like he got injured but was still fine. The next year with Philadelphia, or then he gets traded, so not injured. He gets traded from Indiana to Philadelphia, but still looks fine. Looked amazing to start the season and has regressed back to Sacramento numbers. But I believe if I recall, there was injury and like he was wearing weird glasses and stuff, I think was what
yeah.
Jeremy was telling me. So if Hield can get healthy, Kuminga's out of the
I think
rotation, the
Hield is
Warriors look
healthy
good.
now. It's just the Warriors season has been weird. They started out the season as just like the number one team for a long time. Like they were number one in SRS, and they were like I don't know 10-1 or 12-3, something like that to start the year. Double digit margin of victory, like they were smashing teams. That's and Buddy Hield was shooting the lights out. That's mainly because everyone is healthy and their schedule is kind of weak. Season goes along, some players start to get hurt. The big one is DeAnthony Melton, I think. He was the starting shooting guard. He was playing great for the Warriors. I don't know what, I haven't looked at his wins produced. Maybe they're not. Oh, he's not on the Warriors anymore. He got traded for Schroeder. Anyway, he was very promising, but he got hurt. Other players started to get dinged up. Draymond missed some. Some other players have missed time. Pajemski was terrible to start the year too, just like a sophomore slump, but he's looking better now. And so then the season goes on, and the schedule gets harder too. And so they've been getting their ass kicked lately. They've been on a big losing streak. And so it's really interesting to see your perspective where you're like, yeah, the overall body of work is fine, right? Looks good. And I agree with that, but local fans and media are like this the sky are falling, break up the teams, trade Steph Curry just because of the trajectory. However, their schedule is starting to lighten up a little bit, so I can see them winning. Adding Schroeder, though, it's so brutal, Dre. We've talked to him a lot in the past. He's, he looks good on the court sometimes, but he just can't shoot, and he's a smaller shooting guard that takes a lot of shots. Just kills you. Just
I
kills
just
you.
don't. That's always the baffling thing in the NBA to me. And the one set of context I can give that, or the one area that we often lack context that might answer some of this is things like agent stables and player stables.
Yep.
Namely, is Dennis Schroeder associated with a player or agent such that it is within the Warriors' best interest to sign him? That's the only
Based
justification
on the
because
reporting, it's just we need scoring. We need scoring.
but it's the Moneyball quote, right? If he's such a great hitter, why can't he hit 55.5 true shooting? I'm
That's right.
sorry.
That's right.
No. In the modern NBA, 58% true shooting or better. I do love the movie Moneyball. a series of articles that now that maybe I am back to analytics writing and producing, I might actually write, Brian, was like lessons people didn't learn from Moneyball. And I really did love the movie and the book for all the quotes, right? They have good stuff with if he's such a great hitter, why can't he hit? That kind of logic does apply. And then, by the way, someone like the lessons people didn't learn is how even the Athletics, who you might equate to the Warriors, still couldn't like resist the allure of traditional players, right? Their analytics said, unless you're Ricky Henderson, don't you dare steal bases. But they'd
Shout
still
out
have
to
people.
Ricky Henderson in advance, man. That's a
Oh my
tough one.
gosh, he
I've been
passed
seeing statues and like memorials all over town.
Ricky Henderson and Dikembe passing so close to each other, not right. And those are two of the greatest athletes of all
Mm.
time, and I've met both, and it's not right that they're both gone. So, but yeah, just you've got to look for the right numbers, and even teams that know, right? Remember this something that ingratiated Pajemski last year to us. He was like the advanced stat Sam great, and I'm like Pajemski. I like what you're saying, and I like who you're talking to. And if you're on the Warriors, that bodes well for the Warriors. And then you still have Kaminga and Schroeder on the team. So I don't get it. Brian, by the way, this will actually let us organically start going through the script to the several points I
Oh
actually
yeah.
did have. Cleveland Cavaliers, Brian. It's been forever, so this is a shame. But the Cleveland Cavaliers, a couple like last season were beat up. And they were like, maybe we're gonna blow it up. And you and I looked at the numbers and very similar, like the similar kind of take I'm taking to your Warriors. I'm basically saying the same thing. If they can get healthy and keep Kuminga off the court, you have a great squad. And if there is a way to upgrade Kuminga, then do it. And it's funny because like past me wanted to get rid of Andrew Wiggins on his last contract and his current contract, especially with his attitude. I'm like, keep him, right? For so
Well, the
many
way it
reasons.
works right now is they have to use his salary because his salary is so high. But yeah, I agree with you just in general. He's good this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could possibly wrap up some other players or whatever. So, but anyway, so the Warriors, like the Cavaliers, same thing. It is so tempting when things are going bad to ignore the reasons things are going bad, right? Is Buddy Hield injured? Yes, he's injured. Are certain players, are players off the court? You've already mentioned. I mean, the biggest answer is injury. It's going, can we stay the course and get healthy and win? And if we don't think we can get healthy and we need help, can we get it? And is it going to be good help? But a lot of teams, it's often like drowning, right? They grasp for straws. They grasp for air, grasp at straws, and fail. And Cleveland, we were afraid was going to do this. And Brian, they didn't. They kept. Let me try and not incorrectly name it. Jarrett Allen. I
That's
always
right.
accidentally say Jarrett Jack, who played for the Warriors.
He
It
also
is
played
not
for
a same.
Cleveland, I think.
Yeah, and you're right. He's a great. I haven't
I think
played
he
this
played
in
on
forever.
those LeBron teams, right? Yeah.
You are absolutely right. I haven't played Immaculate Grid in a while, but Jared Allen is a Jarrett Jack is a really good one. Jared Allen, not great, except for if
You
you're
know how
looking
else
for young.
Jarrett Jack also played with, Dre? 40-year-old Jack was the starting point guard for the G League Ignite when Jonathan Kaminga was there.
And it was a shame, right? Because part of why he did that was he was on the Warriors, but he did not win a title in time with them. So, but with that said, Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell. I have to, Brian, for people that have known me for years, this is the season I like Donovan Mitchell and Russell Westbrook, and I like Donovan Mitchell and Russell. I like Russell Westbrook on the Denver Nuggets. I History has a sense of humor, right? So, but the Cleveland Cavaliers, Brian, just look ridiculous. One of the wild ones, actually, Brian. This I've been out of the loop. So, Brian, help me out here if you've been more. Darius Garland.
Oh, I didn't know he was
Darius
playing well. Let's take a look here.
Darius Garland. The
The
How
one
on
thing I
earth did
noticed
this
is
guy?
Mobley took a big step forward this year, and that's been, I think, the biggest thing for them.
I wonder if they've gone like this is interesting because there are stats on this, right? Darius Garland is at 10.9 assists to only 3.7 turnovers. So he has hit above 10 assists per 48 in his career. But in terms of this year, he is at 10.9 assists per 48 at 3.7. That is his lowest turnover. And then personal fouls are up a little, but his steals are fine. And really, he just finally got the efficiency. So I'd be really curious if like him and Mobley. But okay, so here's what happened with the Cleveland Cavaliers, to use the, you know, eyeballing WTF engine. Jared Allen and Mobley, we loved. They're playing great. To your point, Evan Mobley took a step forward. Darius Garland, gigantic step forward. This is what we hate about young players. It's because I
Oh,
can
is he that
correctly.
young anymore? I thought he
Well,
was like 28.
28. No way.
Really?
Dar
No, I'm
Garland?
curious. I'm
All right.
curious now. I'm curious.
He only started in 2020. I mean, he would have been a 19-year-old, what, 24, right?
Oh, I'm wrong. I'm wrong.
I'm like, I'm like, don't do this to me, Brian, if he's 28. So he is, as of this season, 25.
Okay,
And let's
okay,
see
he's fine then. Yeah, so this
when
makes
his
sense,
birth.
right? He's improving as a young player. He's
Well,
also
this
been
is
hurt a lot. He's had a lot of injuries.
yeah. This is what but I mean, this is what I hated, for instance, about Donovan Mitchell back in the day, and actually preemptively learned my lesson. Like, I was bashing Donovan Mitchell as a rookie, comparing him to Ben Simmons, and going, this is ridiculous, and he's overrated, and even like a season or two after, and then going, hey, I've seen Russell Westbrooks, I've seen players that were bad when they were younger that figured it out, because that's the problem. We don't have the historical NBA where players play 3 to 4 seasons in the NCAA against other 3 to 4 season NCAA players that are future NBA All Stars, right? You know, we had what it's ridiculous. What was it? Clyde Drexler. Who were the three? Clyde Drexler, Hakeem, and who was the third on five? Slamma Jamma.
Oh, on Houston Cougars.
Yeah.
Oh,
So who
who
was
the
the
hell
third
was
one,
it?
right? Because
Oh,
it
I
was
can
Clyde,
picture it. Looks
Hakeem,
like.
and there was one other
Let's
NBA
bring it
player on
up.
that, wasn't there?
Someone really good. Yeah, we'll bring it up. I'll bring it up.
And like that team was there. That team was playing against Alonzo Mourning and Dikembe Mutombo on a team together. Of course, Hakeem, I believe, yeah, he had to, because they came out in the same draft, right? Was playing against Michael Jordan. You had what, Michael Jordan and James Worthy on a college team together. Like, you look at the 80s NBA, and you had all stars on teams together playing all stars, and we do kind of get that, but it's one and done. So it's like, you don't have 4 years of college data. You got one, and it still takes them a while to figure it out. And if you're a top draft pick, you get way too much responsibility, and it's rough, because it's like, are you gonna get the responsibility and adapt to it, or are you gonna get the responsibility and fold under it, or like this has been my theory with Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony just picked up bad habits and just never outgrew them.
So
So,
yeah, Dre, I have the Darius Garland wins produced up now, and him being 25, like his progression makes so much sense now.
and I think your injury
Yeah,
point, if you look,
yeah,
2023, he's
yeah.
actually an above average player. Last year he's below average, but I always look for this.
He
If you
missed a ton of
see
minutes.
500
Yeah.
fewer minutes, that tells you. And this season he's back to
But
normal
his first
minutes.
2 years, he wasn't very good, but he got a lot of minutes, and that's probably when we picked up a bad reputation of him. But he was so young, right? But yeah, like you said, his third and fourth years, he was pretty solid, and then he got hurt. So
Got
now
hurt.
that he's in his prime, he's healthy, and he's playing with Donovan Mitchell. That's awesome. Like Darius Garland, by the way, also a son of a former NBA player, Winston Garland. So there you go.
Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up in just a second. And then, yeah, by the way, another this one. Okay, so this one I don't know though, because this one is older. I don't know what's going on with Karis LeVert. This one I'm going to have to look into, Brian, because Karis LeVert was playing with Brooklyn back in 2017. And so he's been around, and this year he's looking great. But it could be, success begets success, right? Like, if the entire team is playing well. So this is the point. Cleveland was beat up and injured the last 2 seasons. And the easy thing to do would have been to say, blow it up. The team is failing. We got to do something. And this was actually a story in the movie and book Moneyball that the movie misconstrues. It had a different take in the book. In the movie, the team is struggling, and Billy Bean gets upset, makes a big trade, and trades away. Was it Jeremy Giambi, the younger Giambi brother?
I thought it was. Oh, you're saying after they traded Jason, they had Jeremy, and they got mad and traded him as well. That
So,
could have
so
happened.
the
Yeah.
movie says the way the movie storyline works, they've lost Jason Giambi to start the season.
Okay.
Jeremy Giambi, I believe that's his younger brother. I could be getting it
It
wrong.
is.
Is on the
Yeah.
team,
Yeah. He ended up
but
playing
he's
on
a
the Phillies after that, I think.
and he's a partier, and so they get upset and trade him away. In the
Oh,
book, he
forgot about
basically
that.
says, "Hey, we were just having a bad stretch, and statistically, we were going to come back from it no matter what we did." In the movie, they're like, "Oh, it's a good trade." But we've said this, like, if you've got a team and you're just going, is the team injured? Is there a reason why we are underperforming? And do we think we can come out of it? And if you have a bunch of young players, if you have a bunch of 25-year-olds that are injured and you think they can get healthy, It's like, do you trade him away now for scraps or do you let him play? And the Cleveland Cavaliers let him play, and they are the best team in the NBA. So, Brian, that's like
Wait, is
lessened
that
the,
right? Have they climbed up to number one now?
aren't they number
I
one?
didn't
They're
realize
31
that.
and
I haven't looked in a few days, so let's
let's
see.
see what, okay, so Oklahoma's, okay, so this gets interesting. They're
Because
31 and
Oklahoma
4.
and Boston have been really crushing people.
Yeah, Cleveland is in front of the Thunder by a
Oh
full
wow.
game because they've got one fewer loss and one more win.
Oh, you're saying in playoff standings. I don't even look at that. I just look at margin of victory. But
SRS. Okay, so by the way, yeah, I'm looking at win loss. SRS. Okay, and let's
they're
Brian.
second in SRS though.
I love this because this was also on the script. Brian, we're actually going to get through the script. We
Yep.
spent all our time on Jimmy Butler, who was the last item on the initial script, but now our organic script we're going through. The next thing on the script was OKC is scary. Brian, OKC is scary. That was my header. I'm just going to repeat that. First off, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander smacking of Magic Johnson.
Mm,
Actually, I have no idea. Is this Steph Curry 2.0? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander averaging 43.5 points per 48, 8.5 assists to 3.6 turnovers, 7.5 rebounds. By the way, people, you and I have talked this. You and I know, Brian, Steph Curry, underrated rebounder,
yeah.
ridiculously good rebounder,
Yep.
especially in his unanimous MVP season. 63.8% true shooting, which is also impressive because he's doing that on like 35.6% from three. He is 60% from two. Really, really good. Really good at the line and gets to the line. I love Shea. He is ridiculous. We already kind of know this earlier. The rest of the team is just strong. They don't have any players getting major minutes. It is a bummer. It's a weird one. Because here's my point on the Thunder. They're good and scary this season. What's their average age? They're young as heck,
Very young.
right? Like,
And they still have most of that big haul of draft picks that they accumulated.
all right, their oldest players. This was one that was funny. We were talking about this, and this is one, Brian, I get to go against conventional wisdom. I think it's just injury, right? I think people are saying Alex Caruso wasn't playing great. Alex Caruso per minute, quite good. The question
I
is
don't know who's
just
saying that. When I see him out there, he looks like Draymond Green playing that free safety position on defense, like switching. Alex Caruso is ridiculous.
so. This is a fractal, Brian. The Warriors are the best team in the league by SRS, and because they're not out east and don't have to worry about the
The
Cavaliers,
Thunder, the Thunder.
the Thunder, sorry.
Yep.
The Thunder are the best team in the NBA by SRS. And because they're not in the same conference as the Cavaliers, they do not have to worry about the Cavaliers for seeding,
Mm,
except for the finals. So here's the thing. They're already scary, right? Caruso's injured. Caruso's been out like the last 7 games, and Chet is out. Now the question I am curious is, how long out? Because here's the thing. If they're the best team in the NBA, if they get a healthy Alex Caruso, here's the thing. This isn't that bad. Sorry. And hopefully, Chet, you don't get offended. I also have your rookie card. Not a graded one, though. But Chet is out at least 8 to 10 weeks. He can still be back for the playoffs. So the Thunder are the best team in the league by SRS. They are the second best team by record. They are missing two close to star caliber starting players in Alex Caruso and Chet Holmgren. So they're even scarier going into the playoffs. We look at their age, and I mean, the oldest players on the team, Kenrick Williams and Alex Caruso. And is Kenrick even getting that many minutes?
he
Let's
usually
see.
does, but let's see.
Let's see. I mean, that could be good too, but I'm just saying, like, those are the only two players over 30. Kenrick Williams and Alex Caruso are the only players over 30. And Kenrick Williams is good. This is stupid, Brian. This is so
Oh, wait,
stupid.
I don't see him on Boxscore Geeks. Anyway.
Uh, Kenrick Williams,
Yeah, I see the other Williamses.
Kenrich.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
He's a power forward for OKC, 318 minutes.
Oh,
So
there he
that's the other
is. There
thing.
he is. I see him
Caruso and
now.
Kenrick Williams are not getting major minutes, but they're still productive.
Yep.
So the Thunder are super young. They have the best player in the NBA. They have injured players on the bench that can come back for the playoffs. And I mentioned this to you in chat before the show. They have 8 incoming first round picks over the next, I think, 5 or 6 seasons. Only one outgoing second round pick. and a bunch of second round picks. So this team is like, it's stupid because they're the
This is the
best
team
team.
that should trade for Jimmy Butler, Dre. They have the resources, they have the fit. Like, I would love to see that.
Should they?
I think personality wise, though, they may be nervous.
I almost I almost like want to say don't touch it. Like
Interesting.
what
They're too
what do you
good.
what do you trade off of? What would you well, so we start getting into funded territory here when we talk like subtle nuances is like, do you want to mess with team cohesion on a winning squad? And it's like, what do you trade? Dort. And here's the other thing, Brian. The Thunder are so stupid. The Thunder are stupid on every every metric, Brian. Every conceivable metric. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, 3 years remaining on his contract. He's only making 36 million this year. Stupid.
Yep.
Isaiah Hartenstein is make second highest, is almost making as much money as Shea at 30 million. And then after that, the next highest paid player is Lou Dort at 16 million. So Lou Dort, by the way, this does break my brain that a $16 million a year contract is fine for an average player, but that is the case. They cannot trade. Here's the thing. They can't trade for Jimmy Butler because they literally do not have the assets.
Mm.
You could make, and here's the thing. So here's the good, bad news, Brian. Chet may be our buddy here. Because Chet is injured, the one asset I would be okay trading would be Hartenstein. Hartenstein. You can't trade him right now because you need that
Yeah,
depth.
the timing doesn't work.
I I don't know. I just
But
think
I think what you said is right. I think they will say, yeah, we won, what was it, 58 games or something last year, 59. They were the number one seed. And then they added Caruso and Hartenstein without really losing anyone significant at all. And then Shea just got even better. I mean, he was an MVP candidate last year, but now he's like number one production. Jalen Williams, by the way, Jalen Williams, Santa Clara, of course, the good one. Like he's, I think, gone from being a good young player to being like, yeah, this guy could be knocking on the door for the All Star game, because again, he's one of those guys where, yeah, his offensive numbers look good on in the box score, but his like individual, um, non-counting defensive numbers seem to be ridiculous based on what I've been seeing. Like people are saying he holds his one-on-one defenders to 30% field goals or whatever, stuff like that. So he has a good defensive reputation as well, as what I'm saying. So yeah, that guy I'm very excited about. Yeah, Cason Wallace, good numbers. I don't have a lot of opinions on him though, but yeah, like this team is so loaded, Dre.
it's
Like
ridiculous. And
Shea's got to win the MVP, right? Because not only are his numbers as good as those other players, like if they're the number one seed and they win the most games, I think the voters will have to do it.
here's the thing. Okay, Brian, you this is brilliant. You're going through the script in order
That's
with
right.
great segues. And future me can edit out me getting impressed that you're following segues organically and then breaking the organicness to point it out. Nikola Jokic is breaking 30 points a game for the first time in his career. He is almost
Ah,
averaging a triple double. He is putting up career highs in points. Actually, it's not. Oh my God, you are so good, Nikola Jokic, because he's not even putting up career highs in rebounds per game and assists per game. Um, you know, him just continually climbing the MVP ladder or the triple double ladder. I could see Jokic getting it for two reasons. One is a makeup for the egregious second place MVP, where he should have been the first player to three-peat the MVP since Larry Bird, and they gave it to Joel Embiid. Can't believe that, Brian. Still stings. So there may be that, right? There may be a makeup. And the other thing is, if the Nuggets don't get another All-Star, you really, oh, here's what's interesting, right? Did anybody, because Chet is injured, Chet I think stood a chance just on like popularity with how he was playing. Did last year's Thunder get more than Shea on the All-Star squad?
oh, probably not.
Yeah, so that's the question. Because Shea
Did
might have the
Gordon go
same.
last year to the All Stars? I don't think so.
No, Aaron Gordon has never made an All-Star game outside of the dunk contest, where he was also robbed. Aaron Gordon, I would make the argument, is the most snubbed NBA player like of all time, All-Star wise. He should have had an All-Star game. he should have had a slam dunk contest win, right? And I'm just trying to stall. Here's the good news. Future me, Brian, this is something I've gotten a little better at, and I know you and I occasionally disagree on this, but I've gotten better at editing, and I use Descript for that. And future me, like, we're just going to sound smart. I'm going to cut out all this rabble rousing. Okay, so last year, yeah, in the All-Star game, there was only Shea from OKC, only Jokic from stupid. There were three Lakers, but only one Thunder and one Nugget.
Who's the third
Whatever.
Laker?
So the Laker, it was oh, that was Clippers. Sorry, I'm misreading.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
Brian. Sorry to be offensive. I
Was
saw
it
that lost.
D'Angelo Russell? No.
No, no, it was okay. So sorry, there were four people from LA. Not shocking. LeBron
That makes
James,
more
Karl
sense.
Anthony Towns, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. Um, yeah, Shea's got the same argument as Jokic. If
Hmm.
neither of them gets a second All-Star, and that's the question. I don't think. Let's see. Is there anybody else that's maybe Jalen Williams? Maybe, 20 point a game player.
It's tough because the All Star rosters are so small, right, compared to other
Yeah.
sports. Like every sport has roughly 30 teams, right? But then in the NFL, the Pro Bowl roster is huge, and the NBA roster is small, so there's not enough
Yeah, so
spots.
I could see it going both ways. I mean, it's going to be 1-2, right? Right now, and I mean it's funny because legitimately it's 1-2-3, but with apologies, I'm sorry. Here's the thing. Here's why Josh Hart probably hates advanced analytics is because normal analytics hate Josh Hart. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, number one in wins produced for the season at 9.5, as we mentioned already, 43.5 points per 48. Stupid. Josh Hart, number two in wins per 48, 18.2 points per 48. Number three, Nikola Jokic, 40.8. The two top players are going to be the players averaging, and it's not even close, right? If we filter, thank you, Patrick, past Patrick. This is painful. There are four players in the NBA averaging over 40 points per 48. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, LaMelo Ball, and Nikola Jokic. Joel Embiid is pulling up the
Lamelo
rear.
just dropped a new track, by the way. Heard it's getting some traction, so go listen to that if you want.
All right, I
Or is
can
that
get it out there.
Leangelo? I'm sorry. I think it was his brother. I'm sorry.
Uh,
I'm getting my
Too many
Ball brothers
balls.
messed
There's too
up.
many balls on the dance court. Okay, but anyway, that's the problem is Josh Hart is never going to get the love as a conventional star. You don't score over 20 points a game, you're not considered an MVP caliber player unless you're Steve Nash, and that's I don't think that's ever happening again. So that's the bummer. Top three players in the league, I think Shea and Nikola Jokic are going to be one and two, and we'll just have to see how the remainder of the season and like how they take the news, right? Because like the Thunder run away with it, number one. There's no All-Star. I could see Shea getting it. The Nuggets could get the fourth or fifth seed just with the injury, but also as well, we'll just have to see.
I want to point out while we're on this page here with the top win producers. Traditionally, we've been very complimentary of the Celtics, but said that, well, maybe Tatum deserves less credit. It's more of an ensemble cast. Maybe players like Derek White deserve more credit, who's having a great year. Peyton Pritchard out of nowhere is a top win producer as well. But Jason Tatum actually is like a top 10 caliber player this year, and his wins produced have caught up with his reputation, and he's looking great right now.
And I was going to say, so they have this is they weren't on the script, so we'll take this brief side road to talk the Celtics. Jason Tatum is number five in wins produced for the season right now at 6.4. As you noted, Peyton Pritchard number six at 6.2. When I first rehydrated the numbers, actually Tatum and Derek White, who's number three, who's what number? They have three in the top 10, which is hyper rare. Drew Holiday again. The coup of the Damian Lillard
Hmm.
trade is there. Luke Cornett, who you're a big fan of,
Yep.
awesome per minute, and then really good per and then just good numbers. Jalen Brown, who we unfortunately do think is overrated,
Great
but is above
defender, though.
average.
Great
That's
defender.
it. Great defender, and that's the thing is as soon as what we just said, right? If you have three players in the top 10 in the NBA, you are allowed to overpay one of your other starters as long as they're above average. And I'm curious about this because I know I could see him being below average and he's close. the Boston Celtics outside of Xavier Tillman Sr.? Is that the right Xavier Tillman?
So
Isn't there
what?
another Xavier
I
Tillman?
mean, well, he probably just had a son recently and then changed his own name as well.
Wait, okay, so I'm thinking Xavier is a common name, so I'm confusing. There's other Xaviers. I was wondering if there was
This
another.
same Xavier Tillman, he's been on the Celtics a couple years.
Yeah. Well, okay, so
Or
there have
they
been a
trade
bunch
from
of.
last year. I don't know.
I was thinking Xavier McDaniel from back in the day
Oh, the
was a
X
player that
Man.
reminded. Yeah.
Great
And then
nickname.
also in a green jersey, also remember the Seattle and Boston actually. So Xavier McDaniel, so different Xaviers, different Professor X's. But yeah, Xavier Tillman Sr. Having a bad year, but that's atypical. And it looks like injury, and then also he's just not getting a lot of minutes. So the Celtics legitimately same boat as always. No weak links. Kristaps Porzingis is a little below average, which
Well,
we
he
noted that.
he was hurt for most of the year. He's
Yeah.
just now playing again.
But basically, we even noted that last year. It was funny because preseason, I was getting ready. I was like, Jaylen Brown is overpaid and Kristaps Porzingis is overpaid and the Celtics are so stupid. And then I went and looked over it, and I'm happy because I think Arturo had him at like 58 wins preseason in 2024. And I went over and I was like, you know what? He's right. I was like, you know what? The Celtics actually improved themselves. And when you're good, you can This is the Al Horford principle. And I think he said he's retiring, right? Al Horford is retiring. But is that principle, which is if you have a good team, you are allowed to overplay for close to average players just to make sure your squad is strong because those weak links can kill you. So the Celtics are scary too. The good news for OKC right now is based on health in the playoffs, only one of Cleveland and Boston can come out of the East. And right now, OKC is running laps around the West. Although, let's note, I mean, this is actually cool. Another name I'm going to have to just look at is Memphis because they had injuries ravage them, and it looks like they're back. So, OKC, Houston, Memphis, Denver as the top four seeds. The Lakers, somehow LeBron James is escaping father time. Dallas, thanks to Kyrie staying healthy, although you said he just got injured, thanks to Luka Doncic being Luka Doncic and some of their young players. I mean, Dallas annoys me so much with this, Brian, where they make really stupid veteran signings, and then they always just seem to have young underpaid players. Luka Doncic would be included back in the day before he got on his veteran max. Just I get so annoyed when teams make bad decisions and those bad decisions get buried because essentially young players look really good and are underpaid.
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of if you can make a bad decision about an important thing, but if you make a bunch of good decisions about smaller things, maybe it balances out.
Yeah. All right, Brian, last thing I did want to put on the script because this was just funny and we would have talked so much of this and I'm like I said, I did not feel right podcasting until the numbers were up and the numbers. Shout out to Dave Barry who wrote the post, very effusive, but like I felt bad because he was like, they're gonna be ready in time for Thanksgiving. I was like, maybe didn't happen for Thanksgiving. Ready in time for Christmas, maybe ready in time for the new year. Made it just after the new year. The Carl Anthony Towns trade. I'm not used to New York winning trades. I don't again, when you and I started podcasting, when we first started I think we did Wages of Windsor initially and then Boxscore Geeks. My bread and butter was calling Russell Westbrook overrated and saying how bad New York was at trading. And this season, I'm like, yeah, Russell Westbrook deserves all the accolades he got in his and he was a multi-time MVP worthy player. He did deserve the MVP he got. And as well as that, Brian, he's playing well for the Nuggets. And the New York Knicks, Jalen Brunson, Carl Anthony Towns, they're third in their conference. I don't know what to do with this, but man, Carl Anthony Towns cannot believe that trade. Utterly ridiculous, Brian. And then Julius Randle, though, is above average. So, yeah.
Yeah, this trade was so sad for me. Well, more on the Knicks before we get into the trade. I think Mitchell Robinson, who's been out most of the year, has actually opened his practice window or whatever. So maybe we'll see some two towers in New York. But this trade was weird. We were speculating about the Timberwolves, similar to the Cavs, right? They have this two center lineup. They did really well last year in the regular season, and were what, like the third seed or the second seed, something like that. But then kind of floundered in the playoffs. And there wasn't really too many rumors I remember about breaking up the team or Towns being on the block, or whether they're going to try to choose Gobert versus Towns or anything like that. Because obviously, like, they've got Ant. He's their main, ball handler now. They've got what's his name, who was traded for Vanderbilt, Jaden Daniels, or sorry, the deal breaker in the Vanderbilt trade, Jaden Daniels. He's good, great defender. They've still got a lot going on. So, like, what was, the I didn't really see this breakup coming along. And my point is, like, the Knicks just kind of reached in and took Towns without, like, the Timberwolves accepting any other bidders on him. It was super weird. Maybe the Knicks are just like, Randall's the only guy we want and no one else is interesting to us. And like you said, he's fine. He was okay on the Knicks last. He had some good games the Knicks last year before he got hurt, but he's inconsistent. He's not a consistent scorer. He'll take bad shots. He doesn't give you much on defense. It's just bizarre to me that was what they wanted back for Towns. I thought Towns had a lot more value than that, and I thought every other team in the league should have been beating down the Timberwolves' door trying to get Towns, and could have offered a lot more than the Knicks did. Although Dante DiVincenzo's no joke, like, he's good, but it's not like they're starting him; they're putting him on the bench. So I think
He was really good for the Warriors when you
he
had
was
him.
great for the Warriors. I mean, DiVincenzo has been great every year. Like, he was maybe even a starter on the Bucks team that won the championship. He's been good everywhere he goes. He's just been hurt at times. He's healthy now, so he's been great. But I mean, as being a main part of the value in a Towns trade, this trade is so weird to me.
Well, and I mean, by the way, that is and good news, Brian. Glad we're back. Glad I'm losing my voice and my headphones are starting to die. They're talking to me.
It's
So
time to go.
we'll wrap. So yeah, that's actually a good thing. Headphones tell me it's time to go. This is what we've noted about star trades. And I think we were talking pre-show. I don't know if we made the show, but when it comes to trading stars, the issue with trying to do the Moneyball aggregate is you slowly just shed pieces. In the NBA, it is so hard to hold on to a collection of players because salaries go up, ages go up, they start getting disputes, you start getting Tetris problems, right? Like, do these players fit together? Which is why there is so much value in a star. Carl Anthony Towns is close to a star player at the most valuable position is so valuable because you stick him in and he's going to fit on any team. Carl Anthony Towns, a 7-footer that can score like he does, fits on any team. You try and cut him into parts, and those parts, just as you're even saying, DiVincenzo is a great player, but he's on the bench for the squad because they have players like Wiggins, etc. So that's always the lesson. If you have a good player, try and keep the good player. Like I said, I don't understand how New York finally turned it around, but good on you because they're doing good. Brian, we're back. So much to talk. We're going to have to see what happens in the next few weeks. Really, the lesson, by the way, Warriors just hold court and Shea versus Jokic. I'm excited to see where this MVP race goes because I haven't passed Brian. I've been like, Jokic has taken this award. No one's close. And Embiid managed to overtake him in popular opinion. And there was a year I was like, nobody's coming close. And Steph Curry took that personally. And I want to say they won a title that year. So
The Warriors, I was
anyway,
22.
yeah. So anyway, with that being said, Brian, we're back. I am Nerd Numbers on most social medias, but I primarily go on Blue Sky Brian. I don't know if you do much social media, but
A
if
little
not,
here and there.
little Twitter, Blue Sky anywhere. Or do you want to
Shout
plug or
out
no?
to the Calgorithm. Hashtag Calgorithm. That's my shout out.
Algorithm.
Oh, yeah. If we got a few more seconds,
Oh,
Dre.
sure, let's go.
Cal Bears football, which I have season tickets for. We're not very good, but we decided to go get super weird on social media, and we have overtaken Elon's algorithm, and we've dominated Twitter so much, hashtag Calgorithm, that we got college game day this year, which is a big thing, like getting the ESPN crew to come to your town. So shout out to everybody that's a Cal football fan that does shit posting. You've earned it.
All right, we didn't even have time to talk football, man. My Broncos made it in. Oh man, the Bronco versus the Bengals game, Brian. We'd had more time, we could talk that. We didn't even have time to talk Clash at Demon Head next time. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining. Nerd Numbers on Blue Sky. Brian Foster is B Foster on Blue Sky. hashtag Calgorithm Boxscore Geeks show. We're going to aim for twitch.tv nerd numbers 8:30 p.m. Central, 6:30 p.m. Pacific on Tuesdays. And then I'll do my best, Brian, to get these out soon after on the normal algorithms. We'll keep you posted if there are any updates, and we're back. All right, everybody. Talk to you next time.